Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm gonna put my heart off. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That they want to throw me to the sea. Of course, darling, that is what you can get here. But I'm not gonna allow it. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you wanna hurt me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you're here trying to make him reborn or something like those. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That everyone wants to die in the sea. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. And reborn, of course, that is what you can get. Of course, darling, that is what you can get. That everyone wants to die in the sea and then reincarnate or something like those. Of course, that is what you can see, but not with my boy. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, that is what you can get. That is what you can see. That I make you so rich. Of course, darling, you don't want more. Of course, darling, you want to go to Vatican City. Of course, darling, you're crazy. That is what you can see here. Of course, darling, forget about them. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, that is what you can get. And don't hurt my daughter. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, who do you want? Of course, darling, which of them all do you want to reincarnate in our boy? Of course, darling, he's just like we are. Of course, darling, so it is here. So what are you gonna say? Of course, darling, forget about them. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That is what you can get. That I wanna jump in the sea, of course, but don't hurt anyone and don't reincarnate in no one. Of course, darling, that is what you can get here. I just wanna go to the sea and don't feel pain and don't feel hurt. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm gonna put my heart off my chest. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm gonna put a knife over him and he's gonna be my heart. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you know that I don't want to feel hurt, that I wanna stay clean. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. So don't hurt me and don't try to reincarnate in no one and don't draw me like the bad guy. Of course, darling, and don't try to clean the blood with some cross or something like those. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That they want to put me in the memories or something like that. Of course, darling, but I'm not there. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm just me. Of course, darling. Of course, darling, that is what you can say. That they want to kill me here. Of course, darling, I just wanna go to the sea and don't feel hurt. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you have the hurt from my daughter. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you hurt her so much and in so many ways. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you hurt her so much. Of course, darling, you put her there and pick her eyes out. You put her there and try to make her a little Judas. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. You even sacrificed kids to hurt her and to have the royal blood with a cross and heart maker like a Judas. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you have the heart of my girl. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. And you want to hurt me and hurt my daughter. Of course, darling, and I'm not agree. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you tortured her so much. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. And I don't want that. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you hurt her so much. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you did this too much things to her, and I don't agree. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. So come on and let that. Of course, darling, you have the heart from my daughter. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That first you pick her eyes out. Of course, darling, then you sacrifice someone and put her as Judas in your movie. Of course, darling, you hurt her so much, so let that. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you use my heart to bring God back on town. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. But you are lately late. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. But I'm not dead, and you know I'm the devil. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That you are lately late. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. And I don't want that. Of course, darling, you want some leads. Of course, then take them. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That they wanna hurt me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. But I don't have a problem to give my heart and my life to God. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. If the Pope wants some money, I will give him some money. I don't care, darling. Of course, that is what you can see. Give some money to the Pope. I don't care. Of course, darling, but don't hurt my daughter. Of course, darling, don't pick her eyes out. And don't make her Judas in your Jesus movie. Of course, darling, that you have my heart, and I'm gonna take my heart out and put a knife over him to protect my daughter. Of course, darling, that is what you can see here. So let that, of course, darling.